Hello, everyone. Tonight, we're going to relax with a story. Not about a battle, not about a king's great conquest, but about a boy, a prince. His greatest sin was being born at the wrong time, to the wrong parents. Hunger. It's more than just lack of food. It's something darker, slower. It eats away at you. Your memories, your voice, your defiance. It doesn't scream like a battlefield. It whispers as your body disappears, rib by rib. This is not a story about a sword or a crown being torn from the hands of an opponent. This is the quietest kind of execution. No gallows, no poison. A royal death, not by war, but by family. His name was Alexei Petrovich, son of Peter the Great, ruler of the Russian Empire, the most powerful man in Eastern Europe. Alexei was heir to one of the most influential thrones in the world, and that was exactly the problem. You see, when you're born royal, people assume you're protected, that your bloodline protects you. But what if that very bloodline makes you a threat? From the beginning, Alexei was loved, not as a person, but as a symbol. His mother used him to hurt her husband. His father feared him, even as a child. And when they were done using him, they silenced him. Slowly, hungry for his body, yes, but first, hungry for his soul. Modern psychologists call what happened to Alexei torture. But what about the official records? It was politely labeled a neurasthenia. History lies. So tonight, we're going to peel back the layers, layer by layer, until what's left is naked, revealed, until we see the story of a child who never had a chance, before he starved to death. Before he was interrogated, before he entered the prison that would become his grave, there was a marriage, but not love, not even peace. Just a marriage arranged by duty and fear of a changing Russia. Peter Alexeyevich Romanov, better known to us as Peter the Great, was not born a tyrant. He turned himself into one, battle by battle, in a relentless effort to drag Russia out of its medieval past. Russia in the late 1600s was vast, powerful, and terrified of modernity. Peter didn't want to wait for it to develop. He wanted to push it into the future. Western clothes, Western ships, Western science, Western power. But to do all that, he needed a wife. And so a traditional noblewoman was chosen for him, Eudoxia Lopakina. Pious, quiet, old-fashioned. Everything Peter was trying to distance Russia from. Their marriage was arranged by Peter's mother, who hoped that Eudoxia's conservative values would keep Peter calm. Instead, they only increased his resentment. "I married her," Peter once said, "but I didn't love her." It was not a marriage. It was a stalemate. She rejected his reforms. He hated her connection to the old ways. When he shaved off his beard, a symbol of his separation from Russian orthodoxy, she was horrified. To her, it was not progress. It was sin. But then, from this cold, bitter marriage, a child was born. Alexei Petrovich was born in 1690. For the empire, he was a celebration, a male heir, succession, tradition guaranteed. But for Peter, from the moment Alexei first cried, Peter saw a problem. The boy was so much like his mother. Gentle, quiet, thoughtful. He liked books, not weapons. Theology, not war. In Peter's eyes, he was not a prince. He was a monk. Peter wanted to modernize Russia. But now, old Russia is growing in the veins of his own son. And Eudoxia, she saw Alexei not only as her child, but as her weapon. When Peter's anger at her finally exploded, he banished her to a convent, not to protect her, but to erase her. But even locked away, Eudoxia could still reach out. Through letters, whispers, and loyal messengers, she showed Alexei a vision of Russia where the church reigned, where foreign ideas were heresy, and where his father's reforms were seen as betrayal. Peter was building a ship. Eudoxia was building resistance, right inside her son. So the royal family became a battlefield, not of swords, but of loyalty, of fear. One parent pulled Alexei forward, the other clung to the past. Can you imagine the price to pay for a child? to be raised in a palace, yet feel like you are on trial, to be expected to love a father who exiled your mother, to be expected to admire a throne that could one day kill you. When you are told you are the future, while everyone else is afraid of your future. Alexei was born on March 28th, 1690, and the celebration was very grand. Church bells rang, the nobility rejoiced, foreign kings sent gold and velvet, but inside the palace there was tension. Peter, then only 18, did not greet the boy like a proud father. His response was cold, wary. The truth is simple. Peter doesn't want a son who reminds him of everything he's trying to erase. And over the years, Alexei has grown into exactly that. He is sweet, quiet, thoughtful. He cries easily. He avoids conflict. He jumps when Peter walks into the room. In another time, another family, those traits might have made him a poet, a priest, even a beloved son. But in Peter's court, they were very dangerous. To the church, Alexei represented hope, a way to pull Russia back to its old traditions. To the nobility, he was a weapon against reform. To Eudoxia, he was living proof that Peter had needed her. Alexei was not raised as a child. He was raised as a symbol, a tool. What about Peter? He notices. Oh, he notices everything. He ordered Alexei to study military strategy, forced him to attend brutal floggings, public executions, told him to be observant, to be tough. Once, Peter forced his son to witness a man being crucified while he was still alive. He didn't try to teach him how to rule. He tried to make him fear and obey. But Alexei didn't become cruel. He became afraid. Peter began to speak publicly about renouncing his inheritance, even in front of foreign ambassadors. "This boy will bury Russia in backwardness," he once said. Imagine hearing that from your father at 12 years old. Peter encouraged the court to mock his son. He asked the guards to report on his conversations, spies in his own family. When Alexei turned 17, he learned a harsh truth. Love in Peter's court was all a show. Obedience was not enough. You had to become what the Tsar wanted you to be, or you will be wiped out. So Alexei did the only thing he thought would help him survive. He ran away. He smiled in anticipation. He nodded in response. But deep inside, he was afraid, because the crown that awaited him no longer felt like glory. It looks like a noose. By the time Alexei was in his 20s, he had come to a devastating realization. If he became Tsar, he would not rule, but be ruled. By the church, by the boyars, by old traditions. But the most dangerous thing is you will be overcome by fear, because Peter is still watching. And Peter was not just a reformer. He was a storm. In his time, he built a navy from scratch, fought the Great Northern War against Sweden, and created a new capital, St. Petersburg, by draining deadly swamps through forced labor, killing thousands. To many, Peter was a hero, but to his son, he was a force of nature, a force that could destroy you simply by standing still. So what do you do if you are the unwanted heir to a throne in a country that doesn't want you for who you are? Do what Alexei did. You retreat into silence. You pretend. And finally, you try to disappear. But Alexei made a mistake, a very human mistake. He fell in love. The woman's name was Afrosina Fedorova. She was neither a princess nor a noble. She was a servant, more specifically, a laundress, a peasant. But with her, Alexei could breathe. Afrosina didn't care about the throne or the lineage. She cared about him, or at least, she saw him become a lonely, scared man, and she comforted him. They became lovers. At first it was secret, but over time, he told her things that no one else knew. That he hated his father's reforms, that he never wanted the throne, that he believed Russia should really go back to its old ways, that he wanted to run away, give it all up, and live as a man, not a symbol. For a moment, it seemed like maybe, just maybe, he had found a way out. But remember, in the royal palace, Secrets are not kept. Peter had spies everywhere, and when news reached him that Alexei was associating with a commoner, opposing reforms, whispering about escape, the storm returns. Peter asked his son to marry a noblewoman, Charlotte of Brunswick-Wolfenbüttel, a German princess. Proper, polite, foreign. It was a powerful move, a way to force Alexei into the role Peter wanted him to play. So Alexei obeyed. He married Charlotte. They even had a child. But nothing had changed inside him. He was still suffocating, still dreaming of another life with Afrosina. And in the end, he made the most dangerous decision of his life. He runs. In 1716, while Peter was away on campaign in Denmark, Alexei fled Russia. He disguised himself. He took Afrosina, and he crossed the border into Austria, hoping the Holy Roman Emperor would grant him asylum. Imagine, the heir to the Russian Empire, hiding in boarding houses, using fake names, praying no one will recognize him. A royal fugitive. He wrote to his father, begged, "Let me go. I don't want the crown. Give it to someone else." And for a brief moment, it seemed like Peter would accept that. He said to Alexei, "Return to Russia, and I will spare your life. I will even let you live in peace, away from the court." Alexei believed him. He's back. That was the biggest mistake he ever made. As soon as Alexei crossed the Russian border, the mask was removed. Peter ordered his arrest. Drag him from town to town on a leash. Afrosina too. In the Peter and Paul fortress in St. Petersburg, Alexei was locked in a cold, damp cell. The very walls of the prison whispered the truth. Mercy was over. Now came the real trial. Not in court, in the torture chamber. Peter ordered an investigation into his son's thoughts, beliefs, every private moment. And Afrosina, she was questioned too. She was devastated. She told them everything. That Alexei had taken offense at his father's reforms. That he wanted the church to rule again. That he had considered raising an army, if Peter died, to restore old Russia. In fact, Alexei was too timid, too weak to lead anything. But in Peter's eyes, it was treason. And now it's time to give an example. The interrogation became brutal. Sleep deprivation, flogging, beatings. Time and again, Peter's men demanded that Alexei confess to plotting a rebellion. On paper, he is confessing. But in reality, he is being destroyed. What kind of father does this? Type of person who believes that the future of an empire is more important than the life of a child. On June 24th, 1718, after weeks of torture, Alexei, weak, starving, barely able to stand, was sentenced to death by order of his own father. But the execution never happened, because 2 days later, Alexei was dead. No one knows exactly how. Official records state that he suddenly collapsed. Doctors confirmed it was neurasthenia. But people only whisper what they know, that his body was exhausted from pain, that he had been beaten, starved, damaged beyond repair. Peter the Great, who built navies, capitals, empires, killed his own son, not with the sword, but with silence and slow, deliberate cruelty. After his death, Peter tried to erase Alexei's legacy. He destroyed letters, forbade anyone from mentioning his name, even sealed the original records of the trial. But history still remembers, not just victories, reforms, glorious conquests, but the cost is expensive. The boy was supposed to be the Tsar. The prince starved to death in silence. A warning to every ruler who thinks they can shape the future without breaking with the past. History does not often stop to mourn the silent, but Alexei's death cast a long, cold shadow across Russia. Not because he ever ruled, not because he is loved by everyone, but because, deep down, everyone knew that he could be a different kind of Tsar. Maybe softer, maybe slower, maybe weaker, but also a human being. After Alexei died, Peter the Great continued. His reforms did not stop. In fact, they accelerated. He pushed harder than ever. He changed the calendar, taxed beards, forced the nobility to wear European clothes and speak French at court. He turned Russia into a great power, but something changed inside him. He won the war against his son, but at what cost? In private, Peter became bitter, paranoid. He never named a new heir, not officially. He kept changing his mind. And when he died in 1725, there was chaos. No clear successor, no clear plan. All that power, all those reforms, and the throne, it passed to his wife, Catherine I, then to a series of weak rulers, backed by court factions and palace coups. The modern Russia that Peter dreamed of, it survived, but only barely. Meanwhile, Alexei's son, Peter's grandson, is quietly growing up, and when he became Tsar, many years later, they called him Peter III. Irony, he is nothing like his grandfather. Peter III hated the army, loved playing with toy soldiers, admired Prussia. He overturned many of Peter the Great's policies, and finally, he was overthrown by his own wife, a woman named Catherine. You may know her better by her name, Catherine the Great. That was the legacy Peter left behind. A reign of blood, betrayal, and fear, all built on a foundation that cracked the moment he crushed his own son. But let's take a step back, because at the heart of this story is a very human question. What do we owe the future? Peter believed he had to make Russia great, even if it meant destroying what had come before, even if it meant making an enemy of his own son. What about Alexei? He believes in something different, in tradition, in faith, in the right to be alone. Two visions of Russia, one old, one new, and there's no room for both. In another world, perhaps Alexei could have lived in peace. Perhaps he and Afrosina would have disappeared into Europe, quietly raised their children, and been forgotten. But in royal families, there is no such thing as disappearance. Or you're useful, or you are a threat. What about Peter? He makes sure the world knows what happens with threats. So when you look at portraits of Peter the Great, the strong jaw, the confident eyes, the Tsar taller than most men in Europe, remember what they don't show. The cells, torture chamber. The son died without a crown, without a trial, without a future. History loves to praise greatness, but sometimes it forgets to ask about greatness. Have to pay how? Alexei never formed an army. He never plotted a coup. He never spoke or spoke up. But his story still holds true, because it reminds us, power without compassion is not power. It is fear in disguise. And in the quiet, flickering corners of history, where soft voices speak and sealed records are kept, those stories, the broken stories, the buried stories, still whisper truths that the powerful hope we will forget. Congratulations, Alexei. The crowned prince has abdicated the throne, and pay with your life. Thank you for following along to the end of today's story. I hope this journey has left you with something to think about. Now turn off the lights, have a good night's sleep. See you in the next video with another story, just as emotional. Good night.